I've been a little bit burnt out recently again, so I'm sticking to videos that are a little easier to make, and I figured, hey, why not do another video that aims to help aspiring Fangon creators, including myself? The art in the background is unrelated. I was just tired of everyone complaining that Mukuro didn't have an anniversary outfit, and I used what was depicted of her in the art book to take matters into my own hands. So, you have your Fangon, you have your characters. Everything's looking great until you remember that this is Danganronpa. There are murder cases, and you need to organize those murder cases in order to, make a Fangon. You try to make murder cases, but they all kind of turn into the same thing. Someone gets stabbed and the culprit leaves an easy calling card at the scene, and the case would realistically last 10 minutes. I just want to say up front that the logistics of murder aren't exactly going to be something I'm taking into account. I'm not a forensic analyst, and I Google most of my info for 10 minutes max, and I'm not even very good with mystery writing. Take what I say as a general guide, or more accurately my opinion, and go do your own research if you really want some good quality murder cases. That's research as in reading about murders, not practical research. Please do not do practical research on this topic. I won't be held accountable for you going to prison. My own writing style, which is to prioritize the characters and their experiences, often guides what I do first, and for me, the absolute most important thing in a murder case is the motive. Not the motive itself, it can be almost anything, but the execution of that motive. A bad motive can be easily saved by an amazing execution of the motive, but just as that can happen, you can mangle a good motive by attaching it to a terrible execution. Let me re-emphasize. Your motive, in my opinion, is of the utmost importance. If your motive isn't executed right, the whole case can flounder, but honestly, I believe a well-written motive can save a shitty case. For an example of what I mean by a motive not executed right, take Case 2 of Total Rumpa Island. Great murder mystery, but Bridget and Jeff have a really awkward motive that makes it extremely hard to root for Bridget until literally a few hours before she dies, even though I really like her in Total Drama. Let's say we're rewriting Danganronpa 2 with an all-new death order. The first cases of Danganronpa games tend to have very generalist motives, as nobody is truly aware of each other yet. There's the motive videos, the restoring of lost memories, and the time limit that kills everyone if it runs out. There's two common and effective routes for us to go here. We can have a generalist motive that attempts to pull on the lowest common denominator to stop killings, or we can have a motive that deliberately sows the seeds of distrust early on. The themes of Danganronpa 2 are heavily based on the characters' talents, and given we have a very wild world to work with, being a simulation, how about a twist on a very common AU? The first motive becomes a quite literal talent swap. Hajime and Nagito would get to have a taste of true talent. It's something Hajime desperately wants, which would lower his guard. He would be so happy to have a real talent that he forgets someone might want it back. Nagito, on the other hand, doesn't believe he deserves to have a real talent and that it should go to a true symbol of hope. Something he obviously doesn't reveal to the others right away, but might crack under pressure around Hajime. And of course, where they gain a talent, two others gain theirs, and one loses their talent. Mahiru, for example, could be the one to receive Hajime's lack of talent, not only hinting at her own connection to the reserve course early, but driving an even deeper wedge into her feelings of inferiority to the others. She already wasn't very confident in her talent or persona, and now it's been taken from her. It would be sure to make her feel even worse about it. And of course, luck can be devastating in the wrong hands, even if it feels like in this game, there's no worse hands than Nagito's. Aside from Mahiru getting reserve course, however, I wasn't sure which way the talents would swap, so I just randomized it because I know you guys like that. Here's my results. Your motive should match your culprit's drive to kill. How important their specific talent is to them, and how much they'd be willing to distort their sense of right and wrong to get their own talent back into their hands. Hajime is removed from the equation because he enjoys having a talent, or I guess at this stage of the story, knowing what his current talent is. He definitely wouldn't kill because the motive actually benefits him. But everyone else is scrambling to figure out who got whose talent. Some characters would likely just go with the flow and be okay with the sudden changes, especially those who received somewhat similar talent, like Sonya and Akane. However, characters whose pride centers on their talent, like the imposter, Teruteru, and Hiyoko, would be pretty desperate to get their talent back into their hands for various reasons. However, I'm going to decide that the culprit will be Kazuichi. Vestiges of his memory tell him that he can't trust Gundam, and that Gundam and him are meant to hate each other, and Kazuichi bears his prides and joys, the four Dark Devas of Destruction. As the new owner of the Devas, They spur into his mind that he's worthless as an animal breeder and that their true master is still Gundam, as they are unaffected by the motive. It's just that now Kazuichi is the one who provides them with the best care. It drives Kazuichi to kill, and he picks the one holding his own talent, Ibuki Miyota, to give him closure. The second thing you should do is put yourself into the murderer's shoes and think about how they'll commit their crime. Danganronpa likes to pull off extremely elaborate murder setups, especially by the third installment, but you don't have that kind of team or experience. It's okay to have a more simplistic setup. Not every murder needs to have some kind of super elaborate machinery to disguise every part of the case. In fact, in the later cases of the series, it began to annoy me personally when they did that increasingly more and more. It's alright if your culprit just stabs the victim and runs. We can add complications to the murder case later. Just have it out when, where, and how your murderer kills the victim. Those are the bare essentials. There's actually an old document that used to get used in old mutual killing games on Epic Mafia back when I was 15. I've never been able to play a mutual killing game, but I've used this blank document to plan out my murders as they're very friendly to the Foghorn format, in my opinion. Returning to our example, how would Kazuichi do it? As said, we need to put ourselves in his shoes. Think like Kazuichi, act like Kazuichi. Kazuichi is a highly emotional person, a coward and a bit of a weirdo. He would probably still have wrenches on him, but I think he'd use Ibuki's new toolkit to commit the murder since he would recognize it would be suspicious for him to use his own tools to do it in. You know, he's thinking, but it's not a fully thought out thought. Ibuki is wandering the airport one night to see if she can make a new engine for one of the airplanes with her new talent, or perhaps dismantle an airplane and make a raft or boat off the island. While she's investigating one of the planes, Kazuichi sneaks in and takes a large wrench from Ibuki's the toolkit. While Ibuki had sensitive ears as the Ultimate Light Club music member, she doesn't as the Ultimate Mechanic. But she's only had this average hearing for about 2 days, so she isn't quite used to it yet. She doesn't hear Kazuichi until he's already slammed the wrench into her skull. Kazuichi quickly and sloppily hides her body by shoving it into the empty engine section of a plane, and he leaves immediately. So now we have the who, the where, the what with, the when, and the why. Next up is to create the circumstances that surround the murder, the bits that will become evidence. What complicates the murder for the killer? Possibilities are almost endless. Perhaps there's a partial witness? Maybe the killer gets stopped on the way to or from the crime scene? Maybe something unexpected happens with the victim? Could a third party manipulate the crime scene or the body? Is evidence disposed of or cleaned up? Does your culprit run into a problem completely out of their control? Do they set up a diversion to get to the victim easier? Don't be afraid to add more than one, as they'll make your murder case more interesting, but be careful with adding too many. Too many is better than too few, but you may end up with a murder case that's too complex for your Foghorn cost to realistically solve. And once you've determined the intricacies of what's happened, figure out what evidence you would realistically leave behind by that meddling. That'll become your evidence, your truth bullets. Once again, back to our example. For an example of a murder case complication, the wrench to the head doesn't kill Ibuki immediately. The wound is fatal, but after she's shoved into the engine by Kazuichi, who assumes she's dead, she climbs out a few minutes later, dazed, and stumbles to the Rocket Punch market, eventually leaving a small trail of blood in her wake as she tries to search for something to dress her wound, thinking she's bleeding out rather than has shards of bone sticking into her brain. She eventually succumbs to her injury and dies in the Rocket Punch market. This one would lead to 3 pieces of evidence. Bloodstains on the inside of the engines, as Kazuichi would have tried to hide her body in there, a blood trail between the airport and the market, and Ibuki's body being found in the market, masking the actual crime scene without Kazuichi's interference. Let's add another event. Kazuichi washes the wrench and hides it in the kitchen. While it's uncertain if he's framing Nagito or Teru Teru, it's still a frame. The wrench would likely still be wet, and at the very least, would be hidden in the kitchen and confusing to Nagito when he comes in to make breakfast for everybody in the morning, and the first indication that something was up. This leads to the wrench in the kitchen becoming a piece of evidence, but there would likely be trace amounts of blood left over that Chiaki or Mikan would find as well. I would add 5 or so for a murder case, but let's add 1 more for this video so that it doesn't go on forever. Kazuichi does attempt to go straight back to the cabins, only to find Fuyuhiko taking a late night walk around the island. He can't get back to his cabin, so instead, Kazuichi heads down to the beach and crashes a small party he previously turned down the opportunity to go to. This not only creates an alibi for himself, since Ibuki doesn't die until a little later, but it eventually becomes the only alibi that could have committed the murder. So yeah, that's how I would go about my murder cases. I hope this was helpful to the rest of you. If it was, maybe hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Though it's still very much in early production, I'll be releasing my own Fangon, Danganronpa the Hunted, over the course of the next couple of years, so it would be nice to have you all around for that. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.